Okay, welcome everyone. So we'll start with prayers. They'll be shown on the screen here. And Asha will lead this morning. Mm.
Compelled by great compassion, you taught the sacred Dharma. To dispel all wrong views, to you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Do not commit any unwholesome actions. Engage in perfect wholesome actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all transmigratory beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryathayami. How wonderful it would be to have for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be free from suffering and its causes of sufferings. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to be never separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they never be separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please, Guru Deity, bless me to be able to do this.
Okay, so I'll take over from here, Asha. Except we need that document on again. We'll do there's the last verse. Oh, Bay has it. Yeah. Yeah, so just before we recite the refuge and bodhicitta prayer, we can just in our minds review a bit what we've been through since Friday evening and generate a positive motivation, a bodhicitta motivation. So yeah, we're going through these two prayers, the foundation of all good qualities and the three principal aspects of the path. And we've been through, yesterday we finished going through the part on the, the, the path of small capable beings and the path of middle capable beings, which both are part of generating, well, the path of small capable being, remember, is a contemplation. Well, there's the preliminaries of how to correctly rely upon a teacher, a guru, and then recognizing the great value of this precious human rebirth in order to generate a wish to make the best use of this rebirth as a human being. And then the four topics: to turn the mind away from attachment to this life, recognizing impermanence and death, the fact of our death, and then the possibility of rebirth in lower realms and future lives, and then the Buddha Dharma Sangha as a valid refuge to protect us from the suffering of rebirth in the lower realms and future lives. And then how they mainly protect us is by teaching karma, the law of cause and effect. So then we went over a little bit about karma, some of the four main characteristics of karma, and the importance of practicing pure morality. So that's the topics to contemplate on the path of the small capable being in order to turn in order to reverse attachment to just the happiness of this life, and also, think more about preparing for future lives. And then there's a set of topics, so of contemplation for the middle capable being, to turn to reverse our attachment to samsara in general, right? To even happy states of rebirth in the future in samsara, recognizing that those are all fundamentally in the nature of the suffering and suffering of change, pervasive compounding suffering. And why are they in the nature of suffering? Not that they're all miserable experiences, but rather anything which is produced by the force of contaminated karma and afflictive emotions is in the nature of being unpeaceful, versus nirvana, freedom from this being under the power of karma and afflictive emotions, which is the state of peace, lasting peace. So, yeah, so then we contemplated some of the topics, mainly thinking about the suffering of samsara in general, the causes of suffering, the afflictive emotions, and then, yeah, mainly those two. And then the three higher trainings we spoke a bit about: training in higher ethical discipline, higher concentration, meditative concentration, and higher wisdom. Mm. And so based on those, then generating the attitude of renunciation, the mind wishing to be free from the suffering of samsara, that sees all the pleasures of samsara as like, um, yeah, like a tiger sees dry grass, totally uninteresting, fundamentally not satisfying. Mm. And then we began looking at the bodhicitta, and actually three verses in the three principal aspects of the path. So, yeah, so remembering that. Mm. And then reflecting, imagining. So today we're going to finish the path by going through more verses on bodhicitta and then emptiness, and then from the foundation of all good qualities, several verses on the path of tantra. Yeah. So generating, yeah, a positive motivation for yourself, thinking why, why are you here? Why am I participating in this session? What do I want to achieve in the short term and especially in the long term for myself, and then especially in relation to others, for the benefit of others. So if you can generate the bodhicitta motivation, thinking, in order to be of the greatest possible benefit to others now and far into the future, then I myself must achieve enlightenment as quickly as possible. And therefore, I'll participate in this session, or whatever motivation is most sincere and relevant for you. Mm. So then, if you like, you can visualize Shakyamuni Buddha in the field of refuge in the space in front, and generate the mind of refuge, and then we'll recite the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my two collections of explaining the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my two collections from explaining the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my two collections of explaining the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. And then, if you like, you can visualize from Buddha's holy body. Actually, an emanation of Buddha comes to the crown of your head, and the same for all sentient beings seated around you. And then from Buddha's holy body, white, blissful nectar light rays flow down, filling your entire body and mind. And the same for all the sentient beings and the environment around you, purifying you and all sentient beings of every form of suffering and the causes of suffering. And then golden light rays, wavy light rays flow out from Buddha's holy body, filling your own body and mind and those of all other sentient beings seated around you, blessing you and all sentient beings to develop all the realizations of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim, um, yeah, up to the state of full enlightenment. Mm. Okay, so let's continue. So let's look at the verses from the three principal aspects of the path again, and then we'll look at the verses on bodhicitta from the foundation of all good qualities, and then we'll meditate a little bit on bodhicitta, and then we'll start on emptiness. I need sharing, Asha. There we go. Three principal aspects of the path. Okay, here we are. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Yeah, so this verse is on bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, it's translated here. So that we read yesterday. Just read through again. Even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, being accompanied by or combined with the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. Therefore, the wise generate the supreme mind of enlightenment. Then I thought to mention, I was reading Pabon Rinpoche's commentary on the bodhicitta today, this morning, and yeah, actually, I'll read from it. Find it quickly. He was speaking about the benefits of bodhicitta, and he quoted from a sutra. So I thought it'd be nice to read that. Let's see, here we go. Um, Letting me go down for. Oh, this is the old version. I'll just forget it. So, yeah, what he was saying is he's quoting from a sutra. I don't remember the name of the sutra. I think it's one of the Perfection of Wisdom sutras. Just saying that, and it reminded me I didn't speak about the benefits of bodhicitta yesterday. But well, what we did speak about is if, as long as we don't generate this attitude aspiring to achieve our own future enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings, then nothing we do becomes a cause of enlightenment. Whereas as soon as we generate the motivation of bodhicitta, then everything we do with that motivation, either as a causal motivation or an accompanying motivation. Remember, there's two motivations for things. There's one as a causal motivation, means like at the outset or even before we engage in activity and in an activity, we generate a motivation for doing that. So that's why it's so important at the beginning of each day to generate a positive motivation, thinking for everything I do today, what long-term result do I want it to contribute towards, right? And then if we do that, then everything we do during the day, even things we didn't expect we were going to do at the outset, it's all connected with that causal motivation. So it becomes, so then all those things contribute towards our long-term and our highest aims. And then there's so there's a causal motivation, and then the motivation is like at the time of the activity. So at the time we're actually doing something, there's a motivation in our own mind, and so we have to also consider that one. But of the two, the causal motivation is considered more important. So when it's saying here, even if renunciation has been developed, if it is not possessed by the mind of enlightenment, it does not become the cause of the perfect bliss of unsurpassed enlightenment. So like that, not only renunciation, but any action or any thought or action of body, speech, or mind that we engage in, if it's not accompanied by at least a causal motivation of bodhicitta, then nothing we do becomes a cause of enlightenment. Whereas once we generate the attitude of bodhicitta, and we can generate that motivation each day, then everything we do becomes a cause to bringing us closer to enlightenment, which means bringing us closer to eliminating all the faults of our body, speech, and mind, perfecting every positive quality of our body, speech, and mind, and then also working continuously and tirelessly to free other sentient beings from suffering and to establish them in full enlightenment. So once we generate bodhicitta, then everything we do, it becomes a cause to free all sentient beings from suffering. And since the wish, so Pomok Rinpoche is quoting, well, first he's quoting from the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by Shantideva, where Shantideva says, if just the wish to free one other person from a headache is something like very positive and very good, then what to mention the wish to free all sentient beings from every form of suffering, is incredibly positive and powerful, motivation. So every day we have the opportunity to generate a bodhicitta motivation, and we think that may everything I do today be contribute to accomplishing the wishes, the aim of this motivation to achieve full enlightenment in order to free all sentient beings from every form of suffering. So although we might not really have a very clear idea, like in practice, what to do to free all sentient beings, just having that wish is something extremely powerful and extremely virtuous, and will lead to actually concrete actions that contribute towards that. You have to start off with these aspirations. It's like we have to think big, dream big first. And then gradually that will lead to, very tangible actions that we can engage in. Gradually it'll become clear. But, and then first he quotes from that verse from Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And then Paboko quotes from the other sutra I was thinking of, where he says, basically the sutra says, if the merits accumulated by generating the attitude of bodhicitta were to take physical form, they would more than fill the entire universe, right? So the Buddha is saying that the merit we accumulate by having this aspiration to achieve full enlightenment, to benefit all sentient beings equally, is unfathomable. It's just incredibly vast. So it's very, I don't know, I find it's very helpful to remember that and think, it's true. Once you become accustomed to the attitude of bodhicitta over a long time, then sometimes it's easy to forget about the great benefits, But especially when you compare to not having that attitude or having any idea of that at all. I know when I first came in contact with Tibetan Buddhism, that's one of the things that most impressed me, was just this idea that an ordinary being like me can become fully enlightened, and the reasons to support that, which are very strong reasons, and then that the idea that I think for many people, especially in the West, but for many people, it's not that uncommon to have the idea that I'd like to use my life to benefit others. That's not exclusive to Buddhism, and it's not so uncommon even among people who are have no religious kind of affiliation whatsoever. But just the idea that I think it's kind of universally held kind of principle that one of the best things we can do with our lives is somehow use our lives to benefit the lives of others, right? But then to think of that not only usually we think of that just in terms of this life, this one life, right? To sort of think of that not only just in terms of this one life, but then over like many lives, future lives as well, makes it more vast. And then to think of it in terms of not only as an ordinary being that I am now, may I benefit beings, but may I gain more skills and more abilities and more wisdom, more compassion, more energy, more enthusiasm, more selfless caring about others, and so that I can be able to benefit others in more and more profound and more vast ways, not only this life but also future lives. And then may I take that to the furthest possible degree of, reducing and eliminating my own limitations, my own faults, my own kind of ignorance and selfishness, and increasing their opposite, selfless caring about others and wisdom. So may I reduce my own faults and increase my own positive qualities to, whatever is the highest degree possible, in order that I can more perfectly serve the welfare of others. In short, may I become enlightened in order to work for the welfare of others. This is something, it's kind of it's attitude, I think, is extremely rare and, and incredibly virtuous. So yeah, it's important to remember like this great benefit of generating this attitude. And then, so then the three principal aspects of the path goes into this, description of how to contemplate on suffering, on suffering and compassion, right? And on the suffering of other sentient beings, and thereby generate a very deep and powerful compassion, wishing to free other sentient beings from suffering by thinking about what a totally unbearable condition sentient beings are, and how, and combined with how kind those sentient beings others have been to us, which you only remember. So when I explained yesterday, I began with this, this is kind of 8 lines together. I began with the 7th line, thinking that all mothers are in such a condition. So thinking how all sentient beings have been kind to us as our mother, father, brother, sister in countless ways in this life and past life. And then within seeing other sentient beings as kind, and wishing to repay their kindness, then thinking about how they suffer is much more powerful, right? So then this first line, swept away by the current of the 4 powerful rivers. What did I say the 4 powerful rivers are yesterday? Birth, aging, sickness, and death. Yeah. So I looked up in Pabongka Rinpoche's commentary. That is the here. It's called the causal 4 powerful rivers. The effect 4 powerful rivers. Remember, there's 2 different ways of positing the 4 powerful rivers. So I looked it up this morning, and you can posit them as in terms of effect. Yeah, 4 powerful rivers, which are a cause, causal, and then 4 powerful rivers, which are resultant. Yeah, you know what happened this morning? I was reading. Yeah, I had so many PDF files open yesterday, and I didn't close them down overnight. And then this morning I was reading again. It was okay, but then I made more notes in this one, but then I didn't save it. And then I closed my lid on my laptop, and so went to sleep again. But then I think it was just too much. Then when I went to open it up at the center, like it just crashed, and all the PDF, they all closed, and it didn't save. I didn't really lose. I lost a few notes that I made, which is one of them is what I'm looking for right now. The highlights that I made, but here I just found it. So here he gives the 4. So there's the 4 resultant powerful rivers is what I mentioned yesterday: birth, aging, sickness, and death. But the 4 causal powerful rivers are, I didn't expect this. He basically says attachment, the river of attachment, the river of views, which means the river of wrong views, and then the river of like becoming, you would translate, sipe chuo. It's like the river of becoming. So, but I think that might be I'm not sure. That might be a spelling error. There's a lot of spelling errors in Tibetan texts because people don't edit very well. But it's becoming, but it could be, it might be of like grasping. Anyway, and then the 4th is ignorance, the river of ignorance. So, and I'm not those 4 as a group, like I'm not familiar. I've never seen those 4 grouped together like that before. It would make more sense to say the river, that was like the 3 root afflictions: attachment, anger, and ignorance. And then you add one more, like maybe wrong views. because that's also heavy. That would make sense. But this grouping I've never seen, so I don't really know the logic of these four. Why those four? And that's why I think the third might be a spelling error, and it might actually be, should be anger. But anyway, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, attachment, okay, of course. And then ignorance, of course, right? Wrong views, okay, yeah, that's, I mean, in the 10 non-virtues, that's the heaviest one of the mind. But then becoming, it could be, I mean, in the 12 links of dependent arising, there is a link of becoming, which is important for like causing you to take rebirth. So it could be that, but yeah, I'm not sure the logic of those. But anyway, I mean, to think about it in terms of the three root afflictions and then something else like wrong views is also makes sense. Anyway, so swept away by the, but the idea is to think about, I mean, how all sentient beings, you know, how they have, just like us, you know, including we're a sentient being, right? How they, yeah, how we're kind of transported into unfortunate circumstances, into experiences of, you know, misery and pain and suffering, like again and again by forces in our own mind, right? By anger, attachment, low self-esteem, and so forth, again and again. So swept away by the current, I mean, in the causal way or the resultant way, the results of afflictive emotions and karma in our mind is birth, aging, sickness, and death, and all the other, you know, unfortunate or disturbing circumstances we face. So swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers, tied by tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo, caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So that is, I think, just the grasping at the self existing from its own side. And then completely enveloped by the darkness of ignorance. So there you'd have to posit that ignorance is something else, right? Ignorance about karma and the law of cause and effect, or the possibility of liberation, the possibility of enlightenment, so forth. Then endlessly reborn in psychexistence. So this has no end. It's like a vast ocean that you're just floating around. Well, but you don't. There's no shore to be met by just floating in the ocean of samsara. And then ceaselessly, you know, in an ordinary ocean, even you're like, you know, you're stranded. You're on a ship and it sinks, and you happen to be in a life raft or something. Even you float for months, eventually you run into the shore somewhere, right? But the ocean of samsara is not like that. You float and float and float, but as long as you don't do something to be free from that, you'll never be free from it. You'll just keep floating and floating and floating like forever. So in a way, it's much worse than just being adrift, you know, in an ordinary ocean. Yeah. So it's like if you're adrift in an ordinary ocean, but on your boat you have like, you know, ideally you have a motor, then you can quickly go to shore. Or you have a sail. Even you have a sail and a rudder, then you can, you know, you can fairly quickly get to a shore. So, but imagine you're on an ocean, even on a regular ocean, though, if even you don't have a sail, you don't have a rudder, you don't have oars, you don't have any way to move yourself. The currents and the wind are pushing you, and eventually you get pushed into, you know, the shore somewhere, right? But on the shore of samsara, like if you don't do anything to get out of samsara, you never get out. Yeah. So you have to, I mean, meeting the Dharma and using the Dharma is like having a sail or having a motor or having a rudder. You can, you know, practicing Tantra is like you have a speedboat. No. Practicing, I mean, Sutra is like you have a sail and a rudder and you can get out of samsara. Yeah. So endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. Thinking that all mothers, so all the kind mother sentient beings are in such a condition, generate the supreme mind of bodhicitta. And then, yeah, this verse we read right at the end of the session yesterday. So this is a verse added by Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche in accordance with someone's instructions, I suppose. In short, actually, I mean, in Pabonka Rinpoche's commentary, he kind of says this basically. In short, if like a mother whose cherished son or daughter has fallen into a pit of fire, right? So imagine you're a mother, a parent, and then you have a child, and they've fallen into a pit of fire. Like, you know, you would do whatever you could to get them out immediately without a second's delay, right? and then, yeah, and who experiences even 1 second of his suffering as an unbearable eternity, right? So you think in a split second, a split second that this, your loved child is in the fire would be like, it seemed like an eternity. It's totally unbearable. Who experiences even 1 second of a suffering as an unbearable eternity. Your reflection, so like that, your reflection on the suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering for even 1 second. So we should generate that kind of intensity of caring about and concern for other sentient beings, such that we find even 1 second of their suffering. I mean, you have to be careful not to be overwhelmed. I mean, because it is quite overwhelming. If you think about the suffering of just one person or a few people, like for a little while, like really as if it was your own, yeah, you can find it overwhelming. But we have to kind of find a balance where we can both, feel deeply moved about the suffering of others, but also not let that incapacitate us or overwhelm us such that we feel like we're just totally broken and can't go on and do anything. We have to balance it with also kind of pragmatic sort of common sense. But how can I use that as a force to propel me on, in my own spiritual practice to make it more powerful and more sustainable in a way, right? So has made it impossible for you to bear their suffering for even 1 second. And the wish seeking for enlightenment arises without effort. Then you have realized the supreme precious mind of bodhicitta. So here Pabongka Rinpoche makes the point that, because this is, actual, there's bodhicitta, there's contrived bodhicitta and uncontrived bodhicitta. Contrived, and same with renunciation. There's contrived renunciation, uncontrived renunciation. Basically all of the realizations on the method side of the path, there's contrived, which means we have to put effort into making that attitude arise. But then there's uncontrived, which is where we're so habituated to that, and that our view of ourself and others has become so in tune with that it just arises automatically. Think about like a parent who has a child, and the child, they love their child, right? Of course, there's a few parents maybe who don't love their child for whatever reason, but a parent, ordinary parent who really cares deeply about their child, like especially a young child, and then the child falls into a pit of fire, the parent doesn't have to do anything to be concerned about them. That concern arises automatically and spontaneously. And then Pabongka Rinpoche he says, talking about uncontrived bodhicitta, like imagine, a loving mother whose child is sick, has a fever, and they have a high fever and they're very sick. Then whatever the parent does, that concern for the child, the wish for their child to recover is there, is present in their mind. No matter what else they're doing, that's continually present in their mind, and without effort, it just naturally arises. So he's saying we need to reflect on great compassion for all sentient beings until it's like that, until, we need to reflect on the compassion for sentient beings until this concern, wishing to free other sentient beings arises continuously and spontaneously. It's just part of who we are, how we identify, and that has a lot to do with how we identify ourselves. That's why it's so powerful, to take the methods from Tantra to use in the contemplation, meditation on the sutra topics, because one of our big obstacles is identifying ourselves in a very fixed way, that, well, I'm not a person who cares about everyone else. I care about me and maybe my family, but others, I don't really care about, right? Which is, that's kind of naturally where most of us are, most of the time. But it's very powerful to dissolve all of that the ways we ordinarily identify ourselves, our ordinary identity, to dissolve that into emptiness. And then out of emptiness arise, then just within the sphere of whatever understanding of emptiness we have, within the sphere, this kind of spacious view of ourself, it's just completely clear. I'm clear. I'm just this pure mind, understanding, dependent arising in emptiness, and that's all. Then within that, to meditate on bodhicitta, great compassion, and then bring compassion to mind, and then identify with that. Think, okay, essentially, I'm just compassion for all sentient beings, and then arise from compassion. Whereas now, in our as an ordinary person, we've arisen from, what are the forces that have produced this rebirth that, we're existing in? It's karma and basically attachment, attachment to our personal identity, and attachment to, whatever things we like. So through the force of karma and afflictive emotions, grasping at a type of self that doesn't exist, we produce this kind of rebirth. So it's very powerful to dissolve all of that. Imagine that all dissolves into emptiness as it does at death, kind of naturally. And then imagine taking rebirth through the force of great compassion, and just I arise as kind of a person whose essence is compassion. Pabongkar Rinpoche mentions, if you're having difficulty generating great compassion, then it's very powerful to practice the Guru Yoga of Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, which is essentially what you do in that Guru Yoga. You dissolve into emptiness, and then arise as compassion, or you imagine, your Guru as Chenrezig, the Buddha of compassion, and then dissolves into you, and they become one with your own mind, and then you strongly identify with that. And then, Pabongkar Rinpoche mentions, this is where I made another note, but I've lost it, is that, I can find it again easily, is where he says there are other profound instructions. There are more profound instructions for doing this, but we can't say them in a general assembly. And then he doesn't say anything else. So there's things like that in Buddhism, where there's certain profound instructions that the teacher won't speak to many people at one time. And then this is one point, when I was studying at Gyume last year, it's one point came up again and again and again, that again, Drutak, the main teacher at Gyume, because especially in Tantra, but also in Sutra, there's some things. And he kept making the point, there's special instructions about this, but to get it, you have to specifically ask a teacher for it. They won't just explain it to a general audience. And so, there's many instructions like that in Buddhism, that you're only supposed to give it to one person at a time, or 7 people at a time, or 25 people at a time maximum. But those kind of instructions, and this is the main point, again, Drutak, the teacher at Gyume, was making, is that a teacher won't give unless someone asks them for it. That's very strong in Buddhism, to not proselytize and not preach. In the sense of not telling people things that they haven't asked to know about, right? Not teaching unless the teaching has been requested. But the problem with that is that there's many teachings that if we don't know about that teaching, we won't request it. You don't know to ask for it. Exactly. It's a problem. But that's why, sometimes teachers, that's why, like Pabongkar Rinpoche, that's why he's dropping a hint. When he says that, there's this profound instruction, but it's not suitable to speak it in a general assembly. What he's doing is giving a hint to everyone there that you should request me for this personally, right? Lama Tsongkhpa Rinpoche would do that all the time. I think most people in the audience don't notice, but because like me and Geshe Namdak and some others who've studied well, the older students, you kind of listen for those things, and like Rinpoche is saying, sometimes he'll just mention, there's a special teaching, but maybe you can't say it here. And then what he's kind of giving a hint that then you need to go ask him for it, and then he'll give. I don't know it. This one I'm talking about. No, that's why I made a note in the text. I highlighted it in red and made a note, like, ask someone about this. The next time there's an opportunity, ask a teacher to point out what Pabongkar Rinpoche says. There's a special instruction for generating bodhicitta that's not suitable to speak in a general assembly. So, if you meet like, Khensa Rinpoche, Losang Jampa, someone like that, or maybe one of the tukus, maybe even like Song Rinpoche or something, because that's also one role of the tukus is that teachers will give them, because that's their role in society, is to uphold all the lineages. So their teachers would tell them, there's a special instruction, and then they would know right away, okay, I should request, and then they request, and then they give it. So those are the kind of things you ask them, no? Yeah. But no, I wasn't. I was just saying this is no, I'm no. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue with this now. Okay. So your reflection on the suffering of all mother sentient beings has made it. Oh yeah, but I was making the point about contrived and uncontrived bodhicitta. So in short, though, contrived bodhicitta and contrived renunciation, they're both, when we make effort to give rise to that attitude, and it genuinely arises to where, you know, like a typical sign is that your hairs stand on end, and you sort of, if you have tears come to your eyes or something. Those are, those are physiological signs. When we have tears come to our eyes, our hair stand on end, that we genuinely feel something very deeply, right? So if your meditation on, renunciation or bodhicitta, even if it's contrived, if it gives rise to those sort of signs of a very genuine, deeply feeling that, then you can say it's contrived renunciation or contrived bodhicitta. And then when that attitude, you become habituated to that attitude so strongly and over a long enough time that it's continually present in your mind, then it's an uncontrived realization of that attitude. And that applies to all the realizations on the Lam Rim. They're all from guru devotion to, thinking about impermanence and death, precious human rebirth. They're all like that. There's a contrived and uncontrived. And in describing, that's one great thing about the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment by Tsongkhapa, the way he presents each of those realizations. He starts off with quotations from the Buddha to show that this is something the Buddha taught, and then quotations from the great Indian masters of ancient Nalanda monastery generally to show that this was considered as authentic teaching of the Buddha by them. And then he quotes from the Tibetan masters that preceded him, like mainly the Kadampa Geshes, but others also, like Milarepa, Marpa. And then he gives his own kind of synopsis of the essential point. And then at the conclusion, he'll say, like, what does it mean to actually, what are the signs that you actually have generated this realization? And then he'll often mention these physiological things that when you think about it and tears come to your eyes and your hair stand on end and your heart kind of flutters and other things, then you've generated that realization. Yeah. But then in addition, as he's saying here, as he said in relation to renunciation, right? The definition, when all day and night the thought, the intention seeking liberation arises. So that means continuously, all day and night means it's continuously. It doesn't mean that's all you're thinking about all the time, but it means there's a sense of yearning for freedom from samsara is kind of present in your mind all the time. Just like a parent, the analogy, again, he gives in the Lamrim Chemo, like a loving mother whose child is sick, or whose child, actually he gives the analogy of grief, a loving mother whose child has died recently. Then there's a sense of grief in the mind, even for years afterwards, maybe even for the rest of their life. And that's continually present in the mind. There's no effort is required to have that, and it's never leaves the mind. So that's the one contrived renunciation, when the sense of that attitude is continually present in the mind without effort, spontaneously. So that's what it says. And the wish seeking for enlightenment for their sake arises without effort. That's what that means. It means uncontrived, without effort. Then you have realized the supreme precious mind of enlightenment. Okay, so now we'll go to the foundation of all good qualities and look at the verses on bodhicitta there. Okay, so the last verse on renunciation was led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution arise. The root of the teachings is keeping the pratimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. And then there's two verses on bodhicitta. One is on the actual attitude of bodhicitta, and then one is on keeping the bodhisattva vows. So this first one says, just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. Bless me to see this, train in supreme bodhicitta, and bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. So you see the emphasis is a bit different, right? So here he's saying, just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara. So again, using one's own experience of being in samsara, which means, remember I was saying yesterday, to actually generate bodhicitta, you have to generate the attitude of renunciation first, at least contrive renunciation. So recognize how you yourself suffer by being, having things uncontrollably happen to us through the force of karma. And then, meeting with what we don't want. And so having no certainty, meeting with what we don't want, and then being separated from things we want to be, we don't want to be separated from. Falling from a status of high to low again and again, having to be separated from our body again and again, taking rebirth uncontrollably through the force of karma again and again. So thinking about all the suffering of samsara in regard to oneself, and then recognizing how, every other sentient being is in that same condition. No, that's what he's saying. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother transmigratory beings. So mother, meaning the beings have been infinitely kind to me. Transmigratory, meaning that they take rebirth again and again and again through the force of karma and afflictive emotions. So seeing that, then I generate, their kindness and their suffering in samsara. Those two together, then I generate this great compassion, wishing to free them. So just asking, bless me to see this and generate compassion, and thereby train in supreme bodhicitta, the wish to achieve full enlightenment in order to free them, and bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. So may I personally take responsibility to free all of these beings from samsara. Yeah, actually I want to check the Tibetan real quick, because those lines, they seem reversed, doesn't it? In this, I don't know, I'll come back to it now. Where's the Tibetan? Because the bare responsibility, you think in the sevenfold cause and effect method for generating bodhicitta, the sixth is you take personal responsibility to free all sentient beings. And then the seventh is you generate bodhicitta, right? But here, I think it's just the English translation. I think they flipped it. Because in the Foundation of All Good Qualities, the please bless me, it's always in the fourth line of each verse. So, yeah. Tone, droa, kukirwa. Yeah, so in Tibetan, that line that reads in English, the fourth line, and bear the responsibility of freeing, that's the third line in Tibetan. So it reads more like, so have all mother transmigratory beings. May I bear the responsibility of freeing transmigratory beings. And it's kind of implied, therefore, please bless me to see this and train in supreme bodhicitta. So yeah, it's reversed in the Tibetan. Tingilop, yeah. Tone, seeing this, droa, freeing all transmigratory beings, kukir way. May I generate, there's a kukir way, taking personal response. It's actually, please bless me. So please bless me to generate the bodhicitta that takes personal responsibility. It's like, no, seeing this, please bless me to generate the bodhicitta that takes personal responsibility to free all sentient beings, all transmigratory beings. It's more like that. Seeing this, please bless me to generate the bodhicitta that takes. So actually it gives the taking personal responsibility. Let's see. To bear the responsibility, in the Tibetan, that's a predicate of bodhicitta. It's a qualifier. It's the bodhicitta that bears the personal responsibility, which makes sense because you generate the attitude that takes responsibility, and then out of that cause, you generate the result, the attitude of bodhicitta. So that bodhicitta is an attitude which is taking responsibility to free all sentient beings. So it's more like, please bless, let's see. Where is this? Seeing this. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It's more like seeing this, please bless me, to generate the bodhicitta that bears the responsibility to free transmigratory beings. Okay, so let me make sure I've explained all of that. Yeah, I think I did. So, yeah. It's interesting. This one is more, it seems more connected with the sevenfold cause and effect of generating bodhicitta. Remember, there's two methods of generating bodhicitta. The sevenfold cause and effect, where the first three, seeing all sentient beings as having been my mother, remembering their kindness, wishing to repay their kindness. And then those are causes for the fourth, a loving affection. So then having loving affection for all of the sentient beings by seeing how they've been my mother, how they've been kind, and then wishing to repay that kindness, then generating loving affection. And then based on that, generating compassion, seeing that actually they are suffering, and then wishing to free them from suffering. And then based on those five, generating this exceptional attitude. May I personally, may I take responsibility to free all them from suffering. And then the seventh, the result of those first six, that therefore may I become fully enlightened in order that I can accomplish that, right? So both the the three principal aspects of the path and the verse in Foundation of All Good Qualities seem more connected with that. Whereas, what's recommended for those of like greater intelligence, it's more recommended to generate bodhicitta by practicing the method of equalizing and exchanging self and others, which has five steps. Where first we equalize the kind of sense of concern towards self and others, and then reflect on the faults of selfishness and the benefits. Then the third, reflect on the benefits of cherishing others. Then the fourth, actually exchange the degree of concern for self and others. So we generate much more sense of concern for others than for ourselves. And then the fifth is practice giving and taking, tonglen. And then I think you have to kind of add a sixth, because then based on that, actually generate bodhicitta. I thought you had a question, Bei. You look like the way you were holding your pen. I thought you were starting to raise your hand. You can. Do you have a question? Yeah, let's stop for questions now.
Why is that better for higher intelligence?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, generally these two methods of bodhicitta, I mean, why is it considered the better method for those of higher intelligence? Well, generally these methods of bodhicitta, the sevenfold cause and effect method, it comes from Asanga. You can say it comes from Maitreya Buddha through Asanga, and it's the extensive deeds. There's two lineages that come from Buddha: the extensive deeds lineage and the profound view lineage. The extensive deed, they both come from Shakyamuni Buddha, but the extensive deeds lineage comes through like Maitreya Buddha and then Asanga, and then Vasubandhu and down to Atisha. They both meet back at Atisha and Tsongkhapa. And then the profound view lineage comes from Buddha through Manjushri, through Shantideva, Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, and then down to Atisha. So the lineage of the sevenfold cause and effect method, it belongs to the extensive deeds lineage through Asanga. And then the profound view, the method of exchanging self and others for generating bodhicitta, it's part of the profound view lineage that comes through Manjushri. So generally, I mean, to sort of, you have to be a person of greater intelligence to study the profound view lineage, basically, because it has the most profound view of emptiness, right? So that's what it's talking about, is someone whose mind is a suitable receptacle to hear the highest view of emptiness, right? And yeah, but then I think the method of exchanging self and others is, I was just looking at actually Pabongka Rinpoche's the Lamrim outlines. Maybe I'll share also. this morning, which caused my computer to crash. Here, I think I'm in the wrong place. 1 minute. And from liberation in the palm of your hand, right? So if we look at the Lamrim outlines in liberation of the palm of your hand, I noticed something that I hadn't noticed before. So I'll point out, which I think is related to the answer to your question. There we go. Okay, so then I'll share now. And we'll get there. So here's liberation of the palm of your hand outlines. So I also made notes here and I also lost them. Refuge. Medium scope. All right, here's the great scope. So here's talking about the benefits of bodhicitta. And then the way to develop bodhicitta. Yeah, I'll highlight. And then, so the actual sevenfold training there. That's that. And then there, training the mind in the interchange of self and others. But look, what does it have right below? Training the mind in the interchange of self and others. So that's that method. Training in the preliminaries in this, so it says, teaching the preliminaries on which this Dharma depends. Training yourself in the two types of bodhicitta, right? Ultimate bodhicitta and then conventional bodhicitta. So what it's kind of saying is to practice this, the exchanging self and others method of generating bodhicitta, you need to understand emptiness first. And I think the reason is that because this, because when Tsongkhapa speaks about this method also, I'm going to save this before I lose it. All right. Because when Tsongkhapa introduces this method for generating bodhicitta, he considers like, what are the obstacles to generating bodhicitta? One of the biggest obstacles is just habitual grasping onto ourself as more important than others. Why do we do that? Because we see ourself as existing from its own side. And because we see the idea of self having its own, the idea of self and the idea of other of having intrinsic reality, of being real. Like I really am just self and others really are other than me. And that's just kind of how it is. So the idea is that we dissolve both of those into emptiness. Realize how my idea of self is just, it's just something imputed by my mind. And my idea of other as other is something imputed by my mind. For example, if you think about others, like just us in the room, each of you other, when you think of yourself as self, and you think of me as other, right? So compared to others, everybody else in the world, I'm the other, right? And others are each a self in relation to them. So there's no inherent, and then he uses the example of think like the far side of the river and the near side of the river. Or if you're in a valley, like the mountains to the east and the mountains to the west. Like it's in relation to when you're on this side of the river, the other side of the river is the far side, right? And your side is the near side. But once you cross the river and look back, the side you're on before is the far side and you're on the near side. So it's just a matter of perspective. And our own perspective there's nothing sacred about that in the world. That just happens to be where we're looking at things from, no? It's like in the room, no? There's for me, where I'm sitting, that's the far side of the room, and this is the near side of the room. But there's nothing sacrosanct about that. If I just walk over there, then it's switched. So similarly, if we just think about all sentient beings from a different point of view, if we think about basically what it would be like to be in their shoes, then they're much more important than us, right? So it's this idea that I think to effectively practice this method of bodhicitta, which then you first generate understanding of emptiness, of self and other, right? And then and then that kind of creates a space where you can genuinely consider the welfare of others as more important than your own. Like His Holiness always says, no? His Holiness often says, you know, I don't think of myself as anything special. I just think of myself as one of 7 billion people in this world, no? And, you know, the other 7 billion, there are many more than number of me. All of their collective suffering, their collective welfare is infinitely greater than just mine, one person. So why should I consider myself more important? Naturally, I should consider, in terms of number, I should consider the others much more important, right? So that's kind of thinking from this objective, you know, point of view, rather than the point of view of just me, one person, and what for me. So yeah, basically, I think it's because this method, it relies much more on an understanding of emptiness and combining that with, whereas the sevenfold cause and effect method, the main thing is not like this thinking of, you know, the emptiness of these labels, self and other. The main thing is thinking about just the kindness of your mother, of one person, of other people to you, and then recognizing how all other sentient beings have been similarly kind, right? So yeah, it's a bit more like, and also because that reasoning to establish all sentient beings have been your mother is a bit shaky. No, it requires kind of a leap of faith, right? Yes. Casey, did you want to say something?
It's more clarification, Geshe. The profound, hidden, secret bodhicitta instruction.
You want that?
I want it. I've already put in a message for. But I just need. Is that like what? Like the teacher has gotten some lung, or is it an empowerment or something?
It would. I don't know. Actually, I mean, like I don't know. I mean, I don't know means I don't know. But it might be. It might involve some empowerment. It might involve just a lung. Yeah. It might just be like just an instruction that's only passed down, you know, from a few to a few. But honestly, that instruction, I don't know. I mean, I know about similar other instructions, and sometimes, yeah, like, yeah, it's just a certain visualization, a special kind of visualization and way to meditate that is, I don't know, for whatever reason is considered. I mean, sometimes, you know, sometimes those things when you hear about, you're like, oh my God. And sometimes, I mean, when you hear like what the instruction is, and sometimes it's just like, oh, it's like, I'm not sure why that was so secret. Even, you know, even like the 8 verses of mind training by Langri Tempa. When he received that, like Geshe Chakawa told him, like, I would never teach this in a public setting. I mean, which is basically, it's very much related to this method of exchanging self and others.
Right. Yeah.
So, but then, yeah, sometimes it's one thing I often kind of wonder about, like, what were people like in Tibet in Geshe Chekawa's time, that he would never teach the 8 verses of mind training publicly. He would only teach it very, very privately to some students. Yeah, I'm not sure. You have to. Whereas, like when the first time I met His Holiness, it was together with in Dharamsala. There was a conference of like academics, mainly from the U.S. and the West, and you know, most of whom are not Buddhist at all. And they were meeting with His Holiness, and His Holiness taught them the 8 verses of mind training. Like, I don't know. I mean, His Holiness must have felt that they're suitable. I mean, there's receptacle vessels for that, right? So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You know, let's stop now for a break.
Can I make a quick comment before we take a break?
Sure, Teresa.
Yeah, I'm on the computer. I have this memory when you're talking about developing bodhicitta without being overwhelmed by the suffering. And you talked earlier about, you know, High Lama's teaching us through doing. I remember being at the Beacon Theater. I don't remember what year, 7-point mind training with His Holiness. And he's in the middle of teaching, and suddenly he just burst into tears. I mean, and you know, everybody's like, oh, and then he said, sorry. And I need to control my mind like a stick with a pig. And then he just went back to teaching. And I mean, that moment was so powerful for me. I can't even imagine the suffering, right? The immense suffering just of his people, let alone all sentient beings. And anyway, it was a wonderful moment of teaching that, yep, at times my mind can get overwhelmed and I need to control it and just come back.
Where was
That's
that
my
again,
comment. It
Teresa?
was at the Beacon Theater in New York City.
The Beacon Theater in New York City. What year?
Uh,
Remember?
I don't remember what year. 7-point mind training.
Like roughly?
Maybe 2010? No,
Oh, yeah. Interesting.
wait, 2001. Somewhere between 2001 and 2010.
Uh-huh. This is
Yeah.
not often His Holiness. I mean, in the when I first was attending the teachings in Dharamsala, like from 2001 to probably 2010, around there, His Holiness would regularly cry. I mean, but not like usually burst into. It'd usually be quite subdued. If you weren't paying attention, you'd almost not notice it.
Yeah,
Oftentimes,
it wasn't like
speak
that. It was
about
big.
in permanence and death. Yeah. But and sometimes, yeah, compassion and bodhicitta. But I never saw His Holiness like really break down and cry and then speak about it. They
I
say
know.
sorry. Like that's very rare.
So powerful. Very, very. I've never, and all the times I've seen him teach,
Oh.
I've never seen that either.
And he said,
Very
sorry, I need
powerful.
to control my mind like a stick with a pig.
Like a stick with a pig. And I think, I mean, obviously we don't raise pigs, but it helped me understand, how you direct it, just direct it gently. Not like I need to whack the pig, but
Right.
just direct it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was
Okay,
my comment.
let's take a 10-minute break.
Okay.
Yeah. So regarding bodhicitta, right? I mean, it's easy to develop bodhicitta towards, folks who are like clearly suffering and all that. I'm sure that is not, I mean, that's easy. Everybody can do it. But it's so hard to develop bodhicitta towards someone who are difficult towards others, difficult towards you. And yes, we can use those sevenfold cause and effect method and Tonglen to develop bodhicitta towards them as well. However, it's still like you are working hard towards them. They are not changing. They are still the same. They're still doing the things towards others and towards you. And the more we learn about Buddhism and compassion and everything, the more you become aware of these negative things that you would have not noticed before. So it's just very difficult. It becomes more difficult to the difficult person, towards the difficult person.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. Well, that's that's the why it's so important to, as a preliminary to meditating on either method to generate bodhicitta, to meditate on equanimity, practice on equanimity. So the thing, I mean, and there's many different contemplations within generating equanimity. It's like the equanimity, of having an equal, where you try to generate a balanced concern for others. So, and the most difficult is those people who you see as like, they do a lot of things to harm others, right? To harm you, harm others. They act in destructive ways, right? But I mean, like the one way to think is, I mean, one way to think is that they're the same as me, and that basically they want happiness and they want to be free from suffering, right? To try to find common ground with them on that level. And then another thing, I mean, and one of the most effective ways to think is like Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, like if someone beats you with a stick, do you get angry at the stick or angry at the person who's wielding the stick? Right? Of course, you get angry at the person. You don't get angry at the stick, because the stick doesn't have any control over what it does. It's the person who's wielding it that controls what the stick hits and doesn't hit. Similarly, think how that person is controlled by afflictive emotions in their mind. They're under the control of their anger, their attachment, their selfishness, their ignorance. It's those afflictive emotions that are like distorting that person's behavior in a destructive way that they don't have control over because they probably never even heard of them or they don't know what's going on. And I mean, most people, when they're acting in ways that are harmful to others, they themselves are not happy, even though they might act like it on the surface, like deep down, they're really not like happy. So those two things, if you can think about how that person, they're under the control of ignorance and their other afflictive emotions. And so they're a victim of forces in their own mind and other people. If you're someone who's been hurt by them, you're also a victim of the forces in their mind that are controlling them. So the person is like the stick, and then the afflictive emotions in their mind are like the person wielding the stick. So it's like, think if that person who you have difficulty with, imagine if they were psychotic, if they had like Down syndrome, for example, or another like severe mental illness that they really had no control over what they said or did, then you wouldn't be very angry at them because you recognize, well, they don't have any control. Right? But similarly, the person, even though they're not like, they don't have a mental disability, but they're under the control of their afflictive emotions. And because they don't know how to deal, they have afflictive emotions arising in their mind and they don't know how to deal with them. Or they've, I mean, there's many different cases, but some people, they've been, because they've been abused when they're children, then that becomes a condition for many afflictive anger and resentment to arise in their mind, and low self-esteem or depression that they don't know how to deal with, right? So then the way they deal with it is, I mean, it distorts their behavior in ways that then they act in ways that are harmful to others, right? So that's one way to think, is that they're a victim of their own, and then also to think they themselves are not happy, right? That can be very helpful, right? And then basically generate compassion for them. I mean, basically it comes down to, instead of generating resentment towards them, generate compassion. And then also, as part of your question, I mean, you showed you have this unrealistic expectation that if we generate bodhicitta for other people, that they will change. They won't. I mean, come on, there's been the Shakyamuni Buddha, there's been countless Buddhas, they generate compassion for us all, and we're not changing. I mean, so we have to let go of that expectation, that because I'm having a kinder attitude towards you, you should also likewise have a kinder attitude towards me.
No, so they are not changing, right?
Yeah.
We know that.
Yeah.
But then, so the 2 or 3 points that you talked about, equanimity,
Yeah.
right? And that they are under the control of afflictions and they themselves are not happy, right? So, but if I use my technical term, like these are mitigations for the difficult situation that you would be in.
Right.
But then, so
What is that mitigation?
mitigation means like you're not resolving, the person is not
No,
improving, but it's
that's
just
right.
mitigating so that it doesn't escalate and you don't fall under the influence of your ignorance and anger and all that, right?
Yes.
So it's a mitigating the situation.
Yes.
But then if you think about the course of your lifetime, then you'll be just following these mitigations throughout your life, dealing with the person without any change in the scenario.
It could be. Yeah. So, yeah, no. Yeah, no, it's life. No, it's a good question. I mean, yeah, it's a very good question. So well, one, if you can generate, like you stay in the same scenario around, I mean, because these are the most difficult things. The people we're around all the time, the people in our family, whether it's our parents, our siblings, our children, our spouse, like whoever, people we work with over a long time. Yeah, there's certain people we have to be around. Like for me, one of the hardest things was that I am my house. I mean, in the monastery, people think everyone's nice in a monastery, but we're all humans. Like we all have mistakes. And I living like my classmates who I don't like that much, then we just meet occasionally and then for class and then then we're gone. But the people you live with, you share the same bathroom with, you share the same kitchen with, is very difficult. No. Because I'm a very neat person. Like when people, after they make tea in their pot, I want them to wash the pot right away. So whoever comes to the kitchen next, they have a clean pot to make tea with. No, not like just leave it there for 2 hours. Are you kidding me? What? Bae, you leave dirty dishes sitting around? Okay. No, but But yeah, it's difficult. But the point I'm getting to is that, but the people that you're in close proximity to, yes, they're the most difficult to practice with. But okay, what's the option? Like you run away? Like, yeah, with your parents, you can move out, right? And then just see them, occasionally, honestly, I think I always make because when I go to visit my mom or dad, like I don't know, I have my memory filters out all the bad things very well, no? So I only remember the good things, and I forget how difficult it is to be with them. So, like one time I was going to visit my dad, and I was planning to stay. Like, no, it's not my dad is fine. It's he has a second wife who I really don't get along with. So I was riding with my sister in the car. I always remember this, and we were driving like I don't know an hour and a half to go meet them for I think it was Thanksgiving dinner. And I was planning to stay 2 nights. And my sister was like, are you sure you want to do this? You could just, because my sister was coming back that night, right? She was like, you can just come back with me. And I was like, no, it'll be all right. It'll be all right. But it was a disaster. It was so bad. But yeah, I habitually stay with my parents longer than it's like comfortable for me. And so I need to remember, like, just stay, like what another guy told me, like, there's a 3-day rule. No, don't stay more than 3 days. Then it's like, it's nice, it's sweet, you catch up, but then it doesn't get like messy. But if you can, if you can be around those people that are difficult to be around and use it to practice more, practicing compassion and things, then it really is a force for you to grow. Like, like I often think about, I like the analogy of a sailboat. Like why does a sailboat move forward? Because it has opposing forces, right? There's the wind pushing on the top on the sail, and then there's rudder on the bottom pushing against the water. It's holding it in place. So it's like these forces, and then there's also there's the aerodynamics of the sail. So it's like these opposing forces come together so that it moves very, very quickly forward. So like that, like if we didn't have people who annoyed us, we wouldn't be able to develop patience. For example, to practice patience, you need people who are harming you, who are doing something that you don't like. Otherwise, you don't practice patience, right? So also, these things also, what you're asking about is, how to practice patience. Part of it is patience. Just instead of reacting with resentment and disliking and wanting to get back at them, to just be forgiving and respond with kindness. Respond like in, one prayer, in the Lama Tsongkhpa, one prayer, it says, to those who harm me, may I respond by benefiting them. May I respond by benefiting them. Even they harm me, may I respond by benefiting them, right? So you just give up that whole like tit for tat kind of thing and just try to be the person that you want to be, irregardless of how they treat you or how they act. It doesn't matter. Like that, what they do and how they are is like, yes, we want them to be better people, but we can't make them better people just like by doing something, just like changing the channel or something like that. No, it's very difficult. But what does have an effect is if we can be kind of like take the higher road, we can be the person we want to be, irregardless of how they are, and then that does have some effect. It's very indirect, but it does have an effect.
And so,
But yeah, there's but what I'm saying is, because you're saying these are just mitigations, right? It's like, yes, but they're very positive mitigations. They're benefiting you, right? It's benefiting you. So if you can stay in the situation and use it to benefit you, then why not, right? Great. But then there's also situations where, it can be the case where it's too much for us to deal with. It's really not, we can't use it to benefit us. And then maybe it's better to leave, to be, that's why like the Buddha recommended to monks and nuns, don't live with your family. He said the household is like a pit of vipers, because it's really difficult to practice, in a family setting. That's why from the Buddha's time till now, like the most, Buddhists who want to devote their life to practice, they take ordination, they leave the family life, then they live with other people who have a similar goal. So there also is that, like the Buddha himself left his wife and child in order to practice, right? Yeah, but you have to see what seems best. Yeah. Yes, Casey.
Just to add another point, sometimes when we are going through difficult things, we don't always realize in the moment how much of change is actually happening within us as a result of. It's only in hindsight we can look back and see, oh, wow, that actually did make some profound change to how I respond to things. Or, so change can be very incremental and unnoticed in the midst of things. But there's a benefit if we can pay attention. Yeah.
And true, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
You good?
So yeah, so this next verse on bodhicitta. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Right. So this is a prayer to take and keep the bodhisattva vows, to practice the morality of keeping the bodhisattva vows. So to explain that verse from the beginning, it says, even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't, so if I develop bodhicitta alone without taking the bodhisattva vows and keeping them, but I don't practice the three types of morality. So the three types of morality in relation to the bodhisattva vows are refraining from harming sentient beings, accumulating extensive merit, and accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings, doing things which benefit sentient beings, so accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings, in short. So again, there's the three types of morality. So right, when you think of the pratimoksha vows, they all have to do with not harming, right? It's all vows to not harm sentient beings. So like to not kill, like the 5 lay precepts: not kill, not steal, not lie, not engage in adultery or sexual misconduct, and then to refrain from intoxicants. Why? And refraining from, taking intoxicants is not inherently harmful, but if you become intoxicated, if you become drunk, there's a lot more chance that you do something to harm yourself or someone else than if you're not, right? So, so that's why the refraining from intoxicants is there, right? So in short, though, the pratimoksha vows of individual liberation, are primarily to do with refraining from actions that are harmful. Whereas the bodhisattva vows, there is that, practicing the morality of not harming others, but then the other two are more on the positive side, accumulating extensive merit, right? So that the more merit we accumulate and positive energy we accumulate, then we create causes to have more good fortune in this life, take a good rebirth, and have more good fortune in next life. Like their prayers, bodhisattvas make prayers to be born in a powerful family with a very attractive body, with a very clear and attractive voice, with a great intelligence, and with great wealth, so that you can use all these different things in order to benefit others, right? The accomplishment of all those things depends on merit. Now, to be born into a very wealthy family requires some merit, right? You've practiced generosity in the past. To be born with a very attractive body depends upon patience, right? You practice patience well in the past. That becomes a cause for having an attractive body. Have a very clear voice. You've spoken in a way that's sweet and kind, right? Then it becomes a cause to have a good voice in your next life. So, so there's the morality of not harming sentient beings, the morality of accumulating extensive merit, because in dependence upon that, you can acquire more positive qualities through which you can do more to benefit others. And then finally, the morality of engaging in actions to benefit sentient beings. So you need to actually engage in actions of body, speech, and mind, which are beneficial to sentient beings. So there's these 3 types of morality, which are embodied in the bodhisattva vows, right? There's 18 root bodhisattva vows, 46 branch bodhisattva vows, which I think I don't know. Do we have a weekend on that later? No, we have a weekend on the refuge precepts. The Bodhisattva vows we have also. I forgot. I know. Well, you don't have to look it up now. We don't. No. Maybe next year. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Yeah. So even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the 3 types of morality, meaning take and keep the bodhisattva vows, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the bodhisattva vows with great energy. Yeah, that's what I was saying. Okay, so that's the last verse on bodhicitta. So then the next verses are on emptiness. So before we do that, why don't we meditate a little while on bodhicitta before the lunch break? Is there any questions about bodhicitta? Anyway, you can always ask later. We only have about a little more than 15 minutes left. So yeah, I think we'll focus on these verses from the 3 principal aspects of the path. Okay, so get comfortable in your meditation posture. Take a few deep breaths and kind of clear your mind. Scan through your body, relax. Release any tension or tightness or discomfort. And gradually focus on your breath for a minute or two. Mm. And imagine yourself surrounded by all sentient beings, like we've done before with, yeah, your mother of this life at your immediate left, and your female friends and family to your left and behind you. Your father of this life at your right, your male friends and family to your right and behind you. Then those whom you're most prone to become irritated, angry with, seated directly in front, facing towards you. Those whom we need to make special effort to practice patience, and so forth. And then all the other sentient beings towards whom we have a neutral attitude, seated all around us as vast as space. And then imagine directly in front of you one representative, one person from each category. One person you feel close to, you naturally have liking for, one person who you have a neutral attitude towards, and one person whom you really struggle to, to care about or to not have anger towards. So imagine these three people directly in front. All sentient beings are around. Mm. So then with regard to the one person who's a friend, someone we're closer to, seated, imagine in front of us. So think in order to reduce our attachment to them, just briefly reflect how, in past lives, maybe in this life, but definitely in past lives, they've done countless things to harm us, right? Yeah, they've acted in countless ways, their body, speech, or mind, that have been harmful to us. Even though in this life we have a good relationship, we're friends, we're close, they're supportive and helpful to me. That hasn't always been the case because they've had infinite past lives, I've had infinite past lives. So in infinite past lives, then at times they've done things harmful to me. So you can always ask that as a question to yourself. Is that the case? Is that true? And then similarly, focusing on the person that we tend to dislike, we can use the same reasoning. Although in this life they've done many things, or maybe have done something to harm me. In other instances in this life or in past lives, they've been very kind to me and done things that are helpful, supportive of me. So imagine how in past lives they've been very helpful or kind to oneself. Or we can again ask, is this true? And then thereby generate a more balanced attitude towards them, not so weighted to the negative. Mm. And then also we can think how all these three persons, friend, enemy, and stranger, they're the same in wishing to have happiness and be free from suffering. Just that. Mm. And then especially they're all the same in having been kind to me, just as my kind mother or father, those have been kindest to me in this life. In countless past lives, they've also similarly been directly or indirectly supportive, helpful, kind to me in countless ways in the scale of infinite past lives. Mm. And so now we can use the words of this verse to think about how they suffer and generate with each observation to try to use that as a basis to generate compassion, wishing to free them from suffering. So the first line says, swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. Right? So we can think of the four causal powerful rivers that of these three beings and all sentient beings are equal in being under the control of attachment, anger, ignorance, and wrong views. Right? In short, all the different afflictive emotions. And then they experience the results, the resultant four powerful rivers, the results of those afflictive emotions again and again of being rebirth, being thrown into rebirth by karma, disturbing emotions, and then experiencing old age, aging, a sickness, and death. So we can think in relation to ourselves, it's the same in relation to others, how we're in this condition. And specifically these three others. How they're swept away by the current of the four powerful rivers. And then the next, they're tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo. So reflect how, just as with ourselves, all these other three beings and all sentient beings, they unknowingly create karma, virtuous and non-virtuous karma, through the force of ignorance, selfishness, attachment, anger, and other afflictive emotions. And then they inevitably experience the results of those karmas without understanding the law of cause and effect. In this life, in past lives, in countless future lives, then they'll continue, chasing after happiness, engaging in non-virtuous actions, and creating the causes of suffering, and experiencing the results of their own karma that they themselves have created again and again and again without recognizing that. So tied by the tight bonds of karma, so hard to undo. So again, seeing this, then generate compassion, wishing to free them from suffering, from the suffering of being under the control of karma. And then the third line, caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So imagine they're wrapped in a metal net, being carried down by the river, their hands and tied, hands and feet bound. So this is the net of self-grasping. So grasping at an inherently existent I, a self existing from its own side, independent of anything else, believing that to be real and that to be the most important thing in the world, and thereby producing this selfish concern, this very distorted, exaggerated, strong sense of self, and thereby this distorted, selfish concern, caring exclusively about myself and not about others. So it's, caught in the iron net of self-grasping. So seeing this, then generate compassion. The wish to free them from the suffering and the root cause of suffering, this selfish concern, or this self-grasping. And in order to do that, think I must become enlightened. Mm. And then completely enveloped by the total darkness of ignorance. So imagine not only they have this under the control of the afflictive emotions, bound by karma, at the root of which is self-grasping, but they just have no idea that this is the condition they're in. No idea of the possibility of enlightenment, no idea of the possibility of liberation from samsara, complete confusion with regard to what they are as a person and the condition they're in, why they suffer, why they have any success or happiness. Completely oblivious to the law of karma, the cause and effect. Oblivious to the way to be free from suffering. So seeing this, then generate compassion and generate bodhicitta. And then the last two lines. Endlessly reborn in cyclic existence, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings. So think about how these all sentient beings, especially these three we're imagining in front of us, friend, enemy, and stranger, how they're endlessly reborn in cyclic existence. So we kind of zoom out, think not only just this life, countless past lives they've suffered in samsara, and countless future lives they'll suffer in samsara as long as they don't practice dharma. And then in each of those lives, so they're endlessly reborn. There's no end to their samsara. And then they're ceaselessly, through all those rebirths, in the past and the present and the future, they're continually tormented, ceaselessly tormented by the three sufferings, the suffering, suffering of change, and especially pervasive compounding suffering. So seeing this, generate compassion and generate bodhicitta. Mm. And then relax your attention there and briefly dedicate whatever merit we've created this morning. May it become a cause to free all sentient beings from suffering, and for that purpose, for us to quickly become enlightened. Okay, so we take an hour and a half break, resume at 2 o'clock.